Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Best of the best in real estate industry is what I bring to you each and every episode. Today is no different. I have a Florida State grad who has a master's degree from Liberty University. He changed lives through home ownerships, helps others create generational wealth through real estate investing. He had 15 years in corporate America experience, probably even a little bit more. We'll get the details on that before becoming an agent in 2018. He is a dedicated volunteer through his church and has been a mission trip leader. His numbers are solid and consistent, both listing and buyer sides. Let's welcome Stephen Jones of Crossview Realty to the show.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Hopefully, was I somewhat correct in there? Obviously, it's translation. We talked about a little bit about LinkedIn and making sure that we have those numbers in there.
Yeah, we're doing good. We're doing good.
Okay, because you are a little bit younger than I am. I think you graduated in 2003, if I'm correct.
Yes.
From Florida State.
Let me think back on that. Like roll it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I remember what's going on in the world at that time. Trust me, I have my 30th college reunion here coming up in a few months in November that I'm rolling into. So, but Steve, tell us a little about where you from, and then what led you to Florida State, and kind of give us a vision. What were you thinking about doing? What was your initial career choices as you were going through college?
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Love the podcast. Love what you're doing. Just highlighting people here in the local Jacksonville area. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So for me, I grew up, I was born in Atlanta and then moved over to Central Illinois, Champaign. So that's about 2.5 hours south of Chicago. And I'm
just thinking of cold, but go ahead.
Oh, no, it's definitely cold. It's cold and it's flat. And the only thing that's out there is corn and soybeans. So for as far as the eye can see in 1 by 1 square miles, it's just farmland.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was there for a long time, went through high school there, did sports, all that kind of stuff, was a 4-sport athlete in high school, and then just wanted to get out of Central Illinois, just wanted to go see something different. And so my mom gave me a radius of 4.5 hours. If you can go anywhere within a 4.5 hour radius. And so everywhere that I picked was like a 10-hour radius or even farther.
Notre Dame's in there.
Notre Dame's in there. That was, yeah. So it was, no, we were definitely not, there was nothing central in the Midwest that I was deciding to go to. So I decided to just head south. Mm-hmm. And so went to, tried a bunch of different schools throughout the South, even the West Coast, and just decided on Florida State. Mm-hmm. Great place. Went there. Loved my education there. For me, it was very much, I was raised with a very strong work ethic, going all the way through, high school and then into college. And I was an out-of-state guy. Mm-hmm. So with out-of-state guys, you're paying a lot of money to go there. Yeah. And so I took it upon myself to, I wasn't out on the Friday or Saturday nights. I was in the library. For me, I had to work at school and just work. So that's why I buckled down and went hard and finished in 4 years and got out of there.
Was it something about Tallahassee, just the way the campus was laid out? Because I think at that age, I know I only applied to 2 places, and obviously the one I went to was in Charleston, South Carolina, so that was very easy to fall in love with. There. I've done some visits over to Tallahassee, never spent time there, but my entire wife's side of the family is all Florida State. Yeah, they live and breathe that. Yeah.
No, it was when I went there, gorgeous campus. It really, in the Panhandle, and especially, even here in Jacksonville, but much more so in the Panhandle, you're a lot more in southern Georgia than you are Florida. And Tallahassee is very much like that. Mm-hmm. It really feels just like the good deep South, kind of like Savannah. Once you get kind of up into Thomasville, you got the rolling hills, you've got the big oaks. Yeah. You've still got kind of plantations over there. So it was, the area was really nice. Campus was just gorgeous.
So what were you envisioning? When you were studying there, what were you envisioning yourself doing, or did you have a vision?
I'm a 4th generation salesperson. So that's just kind of runs in the family deep. Mm-hmm. So did I necessarily want to get into sales? No, but I knew that I always had the ability to connect with people. Mm-hmm. and communicate with them. So that's kind of what I started out. I just got a business degree, got a marketing degree, and that was my goal, was just get a degree, get out, get into the workforce as quick as I could.
Now, was that a quick transition for you? I mean, because you've had some high level corporate jobs, area sales managers, that kind of thing. It just
No. So
what was kind of your first thing out of college doing?
First thing out of college was I went to the Caribbean and worked at a dive shop for
cool.
about a year.
Cool.
Just to get,
yeah.
I mean, we say it's cool now. You ask my parents. It was not, after spending out of state money to send me to Florida State, to then just pick up and
work at a dive shop. So you're a diver.
I was a diver back then. Yes.
Yeah.
So I packed 2 bags and booked a one-way flight and was gone just by myself.
Oh, that is so cool.
So I decided to do that then, before, instead of doing it, hey, once you get retired and all that, like, no, let's just go do it right now.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then there were some family things that brought me back home to Champaign, just with some health issues with some people. So I came back to Champaign, and then I got started looking for the corporate job.
Yeah.
And that threw me into my first job out of college, quote unquote. That wasn't on a boat or being fully tan.
Right.
That first job was, I worked in the wholesale business. So wholesale sign and supplies. So helping sign companies, everything from the little, especially election season, the little yard signs or realtor signs that you see, all the way up to billboards, vehicle wraps, and all that kind of stuff. So I worked for a company that sold all those supplies to the sign companies. So Fast Signs, a Signs Now, a Signorama, all that.
Right.
They buy all those materials from somebody. So, and I was that guy.
Okay.
So that job really taught me the ins and outs of business, the ins and outs of inventory, customer turns, like the machine that is a business.
Are you physically going out to the storefronts or the business owners, or you take a Signorama or those type of places, or as franchisees, are they being told who they got to buy their materials from?
There's suggestions, but it's really, that comes down to the salesperson going out and connecting with them, and really understanding their needs. That's what it comes down to. Because a lot of those people, they are franchises, or most of them are small business owners, or they worked at a franchise and, we're going to go start our own sign shop and stuff like that. So that really gave me a lot of insight into how a small business works, what's important to them, those type of things, and how much relationship matters most. And so that taught me a whole lot about that.
I would, that's just going through my mind right now. Because you're in your mid-20s at this point, right? And you're going in to these franchise owners or small business owners. Not the franchise is only just getting guidance, really, but that, like you said, those mom and pops, they're being, you might be endorsed by corporate, but I'm sure there's several other vendors, to give them choice to go to, and you got to go out there and create those relationships. And you're right, those guys are making their decisions just like they would be making their own. The average person is making their own household decisions.
Correct.
They're making it in their business, who they want to do business with, and then obviously dollars come in there a little bit, but then they have to build. And I think it's one of the key terms that I like to use a lot is value. Because we're going to bring that to the real estate conversation later, is, what value are you adding, to it? And that's a great learning time for you.
Yeah. And this is where I start. You kind of see, I start to develop my personality in sales, start to develop my personality in business. And it's really aligned on trust and education. So even these people who are, they're buying, there's some things where you don't need to educate them a lot on. If they're buying, 100 sheets of little 24 by 18 Coro that you're sticking in a yard. You don't need to educate anybody. It's a price game. It doesn't matter. It's a price game. But on some of the things where they're talking about, hey, should we expand our business into this model? What should we do when we're buying capital equipment? How should we do this? So that really comes into trust and education.
Yes.
And that's how you differentiate yourself in any business.
Because when you start getting into that inventory,
Yeah.
type of business.
Yeah, it's inventory management.
How quick can you get it? Because I'd rather you inventorize it. I call you when I need it.
And so that was a big benefit for me to just to start seeing how businesses inventory, how cash flow works.
Yeah.
I mean, and then starting to get in. That was my first real experience with, cold calling, with working a CRM, staying on, developing a schedule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just those things that you really need once you get into business that they don't teach you in school.
Right.
They don't teach you. So that was where that really came. And I really enjoyed that. And that allowed me to travel throughout the country, travel throughout Florida and the Southeast, and develop that. And then that opportunity kind of came to its end. From there, I jumped over. I really enjoyed doing larger purchases for people. So I jumped into the industrial equipment scenario. And this was actually a really cool job that no one knows about. No, it's super cool. And for all my gearheads out there, they're going to love this. So from there, I went to work in the forestry and shipping business. So it would take, and this is just cool, but for chopping up trees or biomass, taking trees, you'd put them into a 1,000 horsepower machine that had a massive barrel, like 48-inch barrel with sharp knives on it. And it would feed a tree straight into it and chop it up in like 30 seconds.
Just grind it up, or actually just trim the bark?
No, grind it all the way up into nothing.
Into mulch.
Into mulch. And it would do that. So you would see, and I'm not talking, you're thinking, oh, well, it's probably like the stuff you see pulled behind and like tree. Like, we wouldn't even touch those because they're too small. Yeah. So think of something with a 1,000 horsepower engine on it. That's put, like, it's awesome.
It is amazing, some of the equipment they've designed. You see it on, whether someone's doing a reel on it, or on YouTube, or even the History Channel or Discovery, where the machines are made where these things literally grab the tree, cut it, and then cut it in, then strip it, and then basically drop it in the pile for the truck to come.
Fella buncher.
Yeah. It's amazing,
so,
some of the stuff it does.
And so that's really cool. And for me, that was really good to just get into a different industry, different people, because all of that was, out literally in the woods of Florida and Georgia and Alabama. Most people don't know, and this isn't real estate, but as my wife will say, I'm a wealth of just kind of useless information. So, here in the Southeast, we've got the largest wood basket in the world. So developed wood basket that can be processed, reharvested. People think of, oh, you're cutting the trees. Well, they grow back in 15 years. It's just like corn or soybeans. You plant it and it grows. It's a crop. So really getting out there and developing even more the education and the trust, because these were definitely small business owners. These were
in a large purchase.
We're talking, we're talking $500,000 to $1 million, and it's a big capital expenditure. Then we're talking about, how does this depreciate? How is this going to? I was the guy coming in where these are loggers out in the woods who are the salt of the earth, awesome people, still friends with some of them to this day. But bringing it, saying, hey, let's run a spreadsheet here and show you your cost per load to operate. Hey, here's what you're going to gross from the plant. Like, let's do it that way. And really taking that education. Once you start educating somebody, then that trust level just skyrockets.
Well, when you're grinding up into mulch, I imagine obviously all the land clearing around here. You see these machines out here doing similar stuff. Obviously, you probably were selling also machines that, because they're actually literally taking the tree and selling it to a lumber yard, or
selling
or to the
pulp and paper,
paper mills, the Georgia Pacifics or whatever, that sort of thing. Because if they're not using the machine, it's labor intensive, which has a huge expense and liability, because people get hurt in this industry. But then can you be almost? Is it smart for them to be able to turn the land quickly and then replant? Is that a thought? Because it takes 15 years, so what's another month, right?
So that's so that's when you start getting into the whole ecosystem of that business, is where it's not just, hey, the guys who are clearing the land and chipping the land is just one cog in the wheel. You've got, and I had to meet with, guys who owned, 10, 20,000 acres of land developers, they're trying to figure out how to do this. How does this piece fit into it? Then you've got the guys who are going to harvest the wood, who are going to chip the wood, the guys who are actually going to, let's say they're going to replane it. That's somebody completely different.
Right.
And so there's many different things, or even guys, we were talking about setting up biomass plants, and nobody knows this, but because they're not in that business, but a large portion of the wood here in the Southeast is actually shipped overseas to the UK and Germany and stuff like that in the form of little pellets. Like you'd see them for like your Traeger, like the little wood pellets that feed through and it runs your Traeger grill. Think of it on a massive scale. They do that and then process those wood pellets, send them over to former coal-fired plants, and they use them as renewable energy. So that's one. So you never
did not knew that.
You don't know that, and so but that was really cool for me just to learn through that, and being able to, on any given day, I could talk from a range of a guy who was turning a wrench, changing the oil on a machine, and talking about, hey, how do we change out this transmission, of having that conversation, which is a certain skill set for that person. And those guys are geniuses. Nobody just ever hears about them. All the way up to, hey, talking to a CEO of a multinational company saying, hey, we want to talk about putting in a wood processing plant to do chips. And so, and everywhere in between, business owners, guys who are driving trucks, hey, so everywhere in between, I got that experience.
All right. So now you're probably around 30.
Yep.
And you're working through this because to make one of these sales isn't coming in, throwing the pamphlet out and saying, hey, this takes time for them to develop. How do you create a pipeline of business when you got all those different steps going on there?
You drive 1,000 miles a week.
Yeah.
That's literally what I did.
Yeah.
And so I was covering everywhere from Ocala to Atlanta. And it's just not like, hey, let's drive down the road to, this office building and you walk in. Oh, no. They're deep backwoods. You're driving 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
You might not even be able to find them. It's marked. If you've ever driven down a country road in the Southeast and you see like the orange flags.
Yeah. It doesn't have an address yet. It's just
it just, And like the whole like,
it's a 10,000 acre lot.
It's like, oh, hey, you remember there's this tree and then there's a cow. So you're going to go down the tree, then you're going to turn right and you're going to see this cow, turn left at the road after that. That's what you got into.
Yeah.
And this was just at kind of the beginning of cell phones and dropping pins. And so it was literally, but it's really just working. Yeah. It's working and making phone calls.
And I imagine a lot of them are family businesses that they've had for whatever
generations.
Years.
Oh yeah.
So how do you start to, because we talked about relationships in the previous job, and this is a different type of.
Oh yeah. And so there was one where a guy called me up. We were developing a product. The manufacturer had a product of a certain size chip, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, I want you to come out." And so went out Panama City area, and we literally went and sat down for dinner at his house with his wife and his son, and we sat there and we talked the entire time. Didn't bring up business,
right?
But it was, hey, we're going to talk first. Like, I want to understand what type of person you are before I trust you with my business.
100%.
And just sitting there and talking about life, talking about God and family and all those things. And then we were sitting, I remember it like it was yesterday. And it was Jerry. Jerry's a great guy. Jerry Sapp, out of Chipley, Florida. And so we were sitting there and it was 10 o'clock at night and about to call it to bed. And I was getting tired and I'm thinking to myself, I'm this young sales guy ready to go. I'm like, man, I've been sitting here all night and like driven out here and like doing everything. Like, when are we going to talk about some business? Then he goes, well, Steven, you think we can make money at this? I said, yeah, we can make it. And then we got into it. But it was learning to be on their time frame, not mine. And learning to, hey, they've brought you in here for a reason. Your job is to meet them where they're at, not to push them where you want them to be.
I think a lot of people don't, we think of the big corporate farms or that sort of thing. But a lot of this business, and even I think from what the perception is, even the Orange Grove business is all like that. This family owned. Yeah. A long time and they have it and you want to come in and do business, they don't, it's not a, hey, I just need a machine. Which machine do you have? And it's not like there's a 20 other, it's not like a car where you have 20 other manufacturers out there or models to choose from. There's only a couple, and who they're going to buy from. Yeah. And creating that relationship, because it's not, they're not coming and spending the time with them. It's kind of like that. Just came to me, talking about Florida State and that college, the coach coming to get that top recruit. Yeah. Everybody's after that top recruit, but it's the coach who comes and sits down and talks about what life is going to be like for their son or daughter and that sort of thing. And you've got to win that over from that standpoint for them, because that check is big.
Well, and it's people's livelihood. Yep. And I mean,
going back decades with their family a lot of times.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's their livelihood, and they employ a lot of people. I mean, they're small businesses, and we'll kind of see that now that we're talking about this. I mean, we kind of see that trend for me kind of throughout the rest of my career. So after that business, it was we hit a big slowdown. That was kind of around 2008 and stuff like that, and so that, how that affected everybody. That business ended. For a while at that point, my wife was a nurse at Mayo here in Jacksonville. So it was hard to come across a job. So she worked for a while. I stayed home. We had a newborn, our first daughter. She was newborn, and then did some kind of side jobs here and there just to bring in money. And then found a job back kind of in the industrial field, working with big companies, industrial plants, stuff like that. I stayed there for a while until we had our second daughter, and she had a lot of medical issues when she was born, which then after that I wanted to get into something that just gave me more opportunity, which led me to my last corporate job, which was back in the construction business. And so selling big excavators, wheel loaders, and things like that.
So what leads you? So you're Trump, you're all over this real estate from the standpoint of what everyone else is doing with their real estate. Yeah. What leads you to actually come and Crossview is the first brokerage you come to, from what I.
Yeah. So Crossview is the first brokerage. When I got out of corporate America with that job, I was a director, and I mean had North Florida, Orlando, Tampa. I mean, a lot of people working under me, and it was long, it was drained, it was, I got away from, hey, how can I help the person sitting across from me? How can I help them grow their business? How can I help them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when I got out of that, I was really looking for something to do. My wife and I talked about, hey, you know what? Corporate America is not, because I would always butt heads, because it's, hey, how can we help the customer? How can we do this? We don't need to be worried about, hey, are we saving X amount here? What? Is it right for the customer? I'm pretty black and white in that range of like, are we helping?
I'm with you, brother. Yeah, you're already talking.
Are we helping the customer?
Right.
Like, is this making their life better? Like, because that's what's going to bring people back over and over.
I heard a phrase from somebody, managing the spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And that you're dying. If you're sitting, you're dying. If that's what you actually are coming down to, that you have to manage the spreadsheets to keep your job to the next person to validate. Oh, well, look at these spreadsheets. Look at my numbers here. You're missing. You're missing. You said.
And that's what happened to me in my last corporate job. Is it got to that and I lost it, and then it didn't end well because it was just all over the place.
Yeah.
And so, talking with people that I know and respect, they gave me some insight of saying, hey, you'd probably be really good in real estate. So I connected with a gentleman who used to be the broker, Chris Hone, here in Jacksonville. He was here for many, many years. He's now moved out to Utah. But I was in a Bible study with Chris Hone years ago. And he was running the brokerage with Jennifer Hendry, who is still the broker on record now. And I just called Chris up one day. I'm like, dude, talk to me about real estate. He's like, are you sure you want to talk about real estate? I'm like, yes, come on, let's talk about this, man.
Yeah.
And so we went and sat down at Panera, and I asked him every question and everything of good, bad, and different, all this kind of stuff. And he literally just tried to scare me out of it. And I almost do that to this day with people who talk to me about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, this is like,
well, when 80% of the, of those people you're in that testing class with,
boom, they're gone.
They're gone in 2 years. Yeah.
You really want to. So he really, and I can't thank him enough. I still talk to him to this day. Wonderful friend, great mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And, but he really talked to me about the industry. And then as you talk about, I went out and interviewed brokerages. Like by this time I've been in Jacksonville 15, 16, 17 years. I went out and just started interviewing brokerages because for me with a business background, I knew what it, and I'm a big believer in buckets in the 12,000 hour. You've probably heard this before. That's 12,000 hours to mastery. I'm a huge believer in that.
Or you got to do something 10,000 times.
Yeah, exactly. So, so with that being said, I didn't need to work on, and some people come into the business, they need to work on their sales abilities. Great. I didn't need to work on that. Okay. Or they need to work on, hey, how do you run a business? How do you manage your time? I'm good with that. For me, it was, hey, how can I learn real estate as fast as possible? And for me, learning real estate was, I learned by doing. So I wanted to get as many transactions as possible. I could have cared less about the split. Didn't care about the split.
Right.
I walked into people and said, okay, where am I going to get my leads? And how are you going to teach me? That was my thing. And I went to all the big brokerages in Jacksonville, and it was just, I landed back on Crossview Realty because they were saying, hey, Stephen, we're going to give you leads, and we care about you just not as a producer. Like, we care a lot more about you as a person than we do a producer. So that spoke to me. And just being like-minded. Crossview Realty is a Christian-based company with a name, Crossview Realty. Right. It's, I mean, that's what it sets up to be, and that's center of my life. Is how can I serve God by serving people?
How important, as someone's watching here, I bring this up on every episode because I think it's so important when, like we said, 80% of the people who get licensed the same month you do. 24 months are not renewing. They're out. And how important it is for someone to come in. And I think when you were telling me that part of the story, it made me think when you went from the previous jobs of the working with the tree stuff and then the signs before, but then you had the corporate America job where now it's not you and the customer building a relationship. It's you were more guiding a lot of employees. You're looking at spreadsheets. Your personalization of it was taken away.
Yeah.
Did you had to? Was there a time where you really dug in and said, "How my next job, my next career, in this case, you chose real estate. How you want that? How are you going to run that business? How do you want that business to be for you every day?" I imagine you probably searched back. I want to actually deal with the buyer.
Yeah. So, I mean, Tracy, that's a great question. And I think a lot of that comes from personal growth and really trying to figure out who you are and what you do. And this is something I'm enjoying doing now of bringing team members on and guiding and counseling people is who are you and how are you trying to become a better person? And then and heck, I just had a former customer call me late last week. She's transferring jobs and she was like, hey, should I get into real estate? Should I do this? Should I do this? And I said, I'd love to have you. But the most important thing is, hey, what are your strengths? What are your strengths in just your personality? What are your strengths? What are your gifts? What is just something you can do that nobody else can do? What's your strengths? What's your gifts? And then what are you passionate about? Once you overlap those three things, Craig Rochelle wrote a book about it called Chazone, where once you overlap those three things, that's where you're going to be. And at that point, you don't need to worry about money. Money will come because everybody, and throughout all these jobs that I went on, as I chased money, it's like, oh, well, this is going to make me this is going to do this is going to do this. With real estate, it's, hey, all those three little things fit together and then boom, exploded.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's so much, how are you searching that out for yourself? And then that's what I needed when I talked to, talked to Crossview Realty. And it's like, they're like, hey, we're going to be here for you. We're going to help guide you through this, help you build a business, not just, hey, hang your license at our brokerage and the fees are this and this and this and this. And you'll know.
Right. Which you don't even, half people don't even fathom what's out there. I mean, obviously there are some brokers that actually sit down there and do the math for you, but I always love the question, well, how many homes do you want to sell? Like, I want to sell millions of homes. Yeah. I mean, what's the answer to that question? Yeah. What do I want to do? It's what can I do and what is actually reasonable. And I think that loses a lot of people on that.
Well, and what it does, and I have this conversation with people now, is it's not, and I'd say this to anybody who's interviewing brokers. When you're interviewing a broker, they shouldn't be talking about splits. They should be talking about, hey, how can I make you more money? Because splits are one thing, but it's how can I make you more money with the lifestyle you want to live? Is because some people, and the people who you have on your podcast, they'll tell you once you start doing 40, 50, 60 transactions, that changes your life.
Right.
In terms of what you were doing with your family, with your church, with extracurricular, like it changes.
Yeah.
Like, and not everybody wants that. And that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You've got to figure out, what I always tell people is, what type of life do you want to live? Let's figure that out. Let's have that conversation.
Right.
And then work backwards from there.
That's deep.
Yeah. What kind of life do you want to have?
This is some really deep stuff here, Steve. We're going to.
Hey, this is where
I like to.
No, so yeah. And so that's what you got to ask yourself is what type of life do you want to live? And hey, if you want to do 1 or 2 deals a month, awesome. Great. Let's set you up to be successful doing that versus, hey, if you want to run, and that's what I told Crossview. I was like, I want to run.
Right.
Like, let's go. Like, show me how to run. Like, show me, help me learn, help me.
What are the days in a life of running is going to be like?
Yeah. Show me how to run. Like, I want to be a top performer.
Right.
Let's go.
Right.
Like, and that's what Chris and Jennifer, and now Jennifer's, like I said, Chris moved, but that's what Jennifer still to this day. And she's one of the best leaders I've ever worked for, and a wonderful woman who just is always challenging me as a high performing agent of, hey, what are you doing here? How are we doing this? How are we doing? So it's ongoing.
So if you're talking to some new people, because it's because this goes across all spectrums of sales, whether it's in the loan officer world, because I see it in our world as well. There are those people who, they set their goal for 2 or 3. To me, that's setting it up for failure because, it's kind of thing. Well, I just want to do 2 or 3. Well, then it only becomes 1 or 2.
Yeah. And so when you get into that, Tracy, and that's a great question, is like, how do we, and now we're just talking business and sales and all that in general, which I can do this all day. Like, let's go, baby. Come on. So doing that, and I never focus on the outcome. Because once you focus on the outcome, it kind of changes everything.
Just I'm going to make note. Common theme of top producers is that exactly that.
Yeah.
Focus on the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Focus on the process. And I mean, because that's the beautiful thing about real estate or about loans or about anything is the more, I mean, it's all numbers based. You can break it down to saying, hey, if I want to do 1 deal, it's going to take me X amount of phone calls and X amount of appointments to get, usually it's about 100 to 10 to 1 of like 100 calls, maybe gets you 10 appointments. Those 10 appointments, 1 of those is going to get converted into a contract.
Right.
So if you know that, great. And that's what I tell people all the time. Oh, well, we're not, I'll walk in the office. Oh, we're not hitting this and hitting this. Well, how many calls you making? Oh, I don't like prospecting. Okay. Have fun. Like, no, that's,
it is. Well, I will. I'm going to insert that. Not their prospecting is the biggest, whether it's a loan officer world or your world, that is the biggest thing that we do. Unless you're in a call center that literally is out there, as I grew up in Quicken Loans, and when I was originally with Loan Depot in the call center environment where they're spending tons of money. So unless you have tons of money to buy those leads, you've got to get out there. Now, I think there's different ways that go back to your what you like to do, what's you're good at, and what, I guess, what was the third
Yeah.
thing? What was it? It was, what's your unique skill?
Yeah. What's your skills? What's your giftings? And what's your passion?
And what's passion?
Yeah.
And there's people who like to be social. If you're, boom, there's all
And
events going on. Get out there, see people.
Yeah. Some people
babies.
are networkers. And I mean, like, there's some people in the real estate business who, man, they'll walk into wherever, Publix, and they'll get like 3 leads out of Publix.
Yeah.
Like,
they'll stand there in line and they go, hey, by the way, or
this or this. Like, awesome. You are great at that.
They deliberately get in a line.
Correct.
So they can create conversation.
I'm terrible at that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do that. Like, for me, it's, hey, because I grew up in the business world,
right.
I'll sit down and crank out 100 phone calls. I'm good with that.
Right.
Like, I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Where those people will be like, 100 phone calls? I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's fine. You've got to know what you're good at, what you enjoy, and then tailor your business to that. Have you used a coach before?
So
I'm a part, not a real estate specific coach. Mm-hmm. So I'm a part of a mastermind called Iron Sharpens Iron, View from the Top. Mm-hmm. It is a mastermind of like-minded business professionals from all across the country. Everybody from some people who are W-2s to people like myself, run my own small business, all the way up to people who've had, 7-10 figure exits.
Right.
And it's how do you come around each other and try to increase all 5 areas of your life. So
just particularly about the subject of finding those what you're passionate about, what's unique about finding those things. Sometimes you need to find somebody who is,
of course, without a doubt,
they're in this.
I highly
find what those things actually are.
Tracy, highly suggest anybody who's out there, find yourself a coach, find yourself a mentor, even more a coach, especially somebody you got to pay for. Like, that's where the line gets crossed. Like, people won't do it because, like, man, this is expensive. I'm not going to spend the money on this. Well, what you're doing is you're not spending the money on growing yourself. Like, that's where people, like, the mindset changes is, hey, we'll go spend $2,000 a month on Zillow leads. Sure, great. Oh, no problem with that. But you're not going to spend $500 a month on making yourself a better person.
Right.
Making yourself a better business owner, better husband,
which
better
is
wife.
Going to turn that $2,000 in Zillow leads into much more.
Exactly.
Because you're much better a person.
Correct.
That's kind of, it took me, I've talked to so many younger people. I'm so jealous of them because I wish I came to this realization 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But it's something that I realized, 2 or 3 years ago. And one of the reasons, starting the podcast is to sit down with top people and, surrounding yourself by that sort of thing and exchange those ideas, finding out what you are really good at. And sometimes you need that coach to pound that into you a little bit dry, make you dig deep into those things. Because the one thing, whether it's the loan officer world or especially the real estate world, every one of these top agents run their business differently.
Yeah.
There's no exact cookie cutter. Here's the book, do it. There's a book, it gives you an outline, and then your personality, what you like to do, what you're passionate about doing has to be inserted into it.
It has to be inserted into it. And the big thing too is I mean, you can make it whatever you want to make it. You can have a lifestyle business. Great. Have a lifestyle business. That's awesome. You can grow and have a huge team and run it like a corporation. Awesome. You could just be a little Navy SEAL unit and have 5 or 6 and you're just crushing it. And that's what you want. Right. There's no right or wrong. But the big thing is you've got to find what you want to do and go do it.
And doing it in those things. And that's where my Grant Cardone comes in. And 10X it.
Yeah.
Tend to double down on what you really like doing. John Brooks with Momentum, he put me onto it. And the Clifton assessment is what he uses. And he says he gives it to all his agents to find out how they like the prospect.
Yeah.
Some people like to pull those leads down.
Yeah.
Some people don't like calling on those leads. He's had an agent that just blew her business up because they actually found out that's what she's really good at.
Yeah.
And she likes doing it. 10X it.
Well, sidebar here. I met a guy, he called me up I had a listing over in Orange Park and he said, hey, I'd like to do an open house on your listing. And it didn't work out, but then we just got to talking and the way he got his business I would never do this and it just blew my mind. But the way he got his business is he would go out on Friday, Saturday, Sunday and he would farm certain areas of people who had like big dumpsters or there's stuff out front or any no, seriously.
Yeah, I hear you.
Or any garage sales or estate sales.
Yeah.
And he'd walk up and just start, very nice guy, walk up, hey, how you doing? What's good? You guys remodeling in there? What's going on? And that's how he got all his business. And I was like, that's a great, like, I would never do that.
Right.
Like, that's not in my personality. Right. He loves doing it.
Yeah.
And so there's always a different way to do something. Find what you like and go to it.
You talked about your mastermind but what do you, and obviously so you're very involved in your church. So, the Bible study, you mentioned that as well. What are some other things that you do to we talked about working on yourself. Are you a podcast listener or a book listener? Do you follow anyone individually?
Oh yeah, great question. Now you're really opening up like Pandora's box here, Tracy. Like now we're really getting into it. Real estate's going to go out the window very quickly. Like, so I'm a personal growth junkie and always have been. It really got started out for me on Entree Leadership through Dave Ramsey years ago. Ken Coleman and the Ken Coleman podcast. Great guy. If you never listened to him, great interview question. Ken Coleman. Okay. Yeah. So I got started with that years ago. And then into kind of Bible podcasts. And then right now, I always have for real estate. I've got the Team Building podcast by Jeff Cohn, who's out in Nebraska. He was with Berkshire Hathaway and then KW Elite, run the biggest team in the world. Right. So listen to Jeff Cohn a lot. I listen to the Real Estate Guys Radio Network, which is more of investing on a larger scale, not just single family homes, which are awesome. You should do that. That's part of it. But hey, how can you invest?
Multiple doors.
Well, not even that, but even getting into what does it look like for commercial? Because in residential, everybody's, let's go buy a single family home. Great. I own a single family home as an investment. That's awesome. But I'm not limited to that. I'm also going to look at, hey, can I go buy farmland? Can I go buy commercial? Can I buy this building? And so many different things, and it just gives you a different perspective. Yeah. Because we don't know what we don't know. And then also I listen to a lot of, I'll throw some Brian Buffini in there. And then also I've always got books on tape. Books on tape with as much driving as I do at being a real estate agent, books on tape all the time.
I think, one thing I've learned, and I started off in last year, 21, learning about podcast, hired a coach, learned everything about how this works, went to a convention in August. Becoming a junkie on the podcast, I'd never listened to a podcast before. And actually I started purging them. And then I started following this group, the Mortgage Market Animals. And and then you're talking about the other real estate podcasts that are out there. Even if you're not following every single episode, just I'm popping around listening. Hey, what's their subject today? Because you're in the car and you got 30 minutes to kill till you get there. And it's to me, and I'm sure you'll agree with this. One, it gives you energy because they're generally positive. You generally have a positive person on there, and it's like, but then your whole vision of the industry just starts growing and growing. And if you're just going through your day-to-day things and you're not taking in some of that stuff, positive stuff from the outside, you're not expanding what things like the multiple doors, buying multiple family listings or a commercial property, opening that stuff. If you're just focused on it, when that customer comes in front of you, which it could be a huge opportunity for you, and starts talking about a commercial building or buying a 4-family unit or whatever, and you don't have any mental knowledge of that or what the experts are talking about, you're really shortening yourself on what you can do in the industry.
So and I agree with you, and I think what we're getting down to is the difference between you, me, other agents, other loan officers is the people we talk to, the books we read, and the podcasts we listen to. Yeah. Like that's the difference. That's everybody's got 24 hours in a day. And so what are you doing to grow yourself? And you're right. It gives you other opportunities. It allows you to talk differently, think differently, expand, run your business better. So I'm a big proponent of that, because if you're not doing that,
I get a lot of energy from it. I get motivated from just listening to a positive story from
Okay,
it.
well,
and it triggers thoughts in my head, and that's what gets me going.
Well,
I'm the visionary.
yeah, no. Yeah. So, I've never met a successful pessimist. So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. So
very good.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. I took this this quote from, I can't remember which site it was, but this is directly yours. My passion is to educate, empower, and inform people throughout the buying, selling process, be it for your personal home investment and company growth. That more or less like your mission statement and a lot of things that we've been talking about. So what are some, if you're working with somebody never sold, they're thinking about whether they're thinking about getting real estate or they're in real estate, and you're mentoring them it sounds like you're doing some at Crossview, some of these things. What are some little things that are Steven's little spins on when you're working through a transaction, buying or selling? What are some of the things that you do you talked about building that relationship with them? We talked about in your previous things, but now bringing it to real estate. Mm-hmm. What are some things that that you like to do to just make it yours?
So I think the big thing, like, let's talk buyers right now. Mm-hmm. If we're talking buyers, and you work with a lot of buyers, the big thing people want to know, and for people who don't know, here in Northeast Florida, there's probably 10,000 realtors in Northeast Florida. And there's so many of them. If you go ask anybody, hey, do you know any realtors? You could probably get 5 recommendations in 2 seconds. Same with loan guy. Like, hey, do you know any loan officers?
Right.
Who does your mortgage? Oh, use this guy. So it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So the big thing that I do is, one, ask good questions. Ask good questions and then shut up. Like, you don't need to talk.
Right.
You need to find out. They want to tell you what's going on. They want to tell you what's happening. Your job is to ask good questions for them to talk even more. Mm-hmm. And then really, for me, and I leave this on my voicemails, and after we finish this, I'm going to go start prospecting. But I leave this on my voicemails of, hey, there's no pressure and no obligation. I always sit down either virtually or in person and do a new home buyer consultation I'm going to make sure that they know everything that's coming. From talking to a realtor, how to look on a website, what it looks like to get pre-qualified, pre-approved, what the I go through the whole thing.
Don't go into new construction without a realtor.
Yeah. So my goal is just to educate and empower somebody to make an informed decision. Because with that, you can think about it. We've all done it before. Yeah. We've made a decision where we're not educated or we're not informed. Usually that decision goes pretty bad. But when we do make an educated and informed decision, really no matter what happens at the end of it, you go, well, I made the best decision with the information I had.
Yeah.
And you don't really, even if it turned out kind of bad, you're still like, well, you live and you learn, but I made the best decision.
Right.
That's one, and especially right now in this market, especially with, the millennials are the largest home buyers right now. Mm-hmm. They've never been through this before. These are their first time homes, or they maybe bought one 7 years ago, but they don't remember any of it.
Right.
And that's fine. That's no big deal. And so that's really my goal, is just, and once again, I take it all the way back to the beginning in my first career of how can I educate people? Once on the home buying process, what you should run into, what you shouldn't, be aware of that, is I want to be their guide through the process.
Right.
That's it. I'm not there. I can't convince
you're building a lot of credibility.
Yeah.
Because you're taking the time without.
Yeah. Well, I'm their guide.
Trying to close them. They're talking to you, so they're in front of you, and in a sense they are closed now. You're educating them.
Yeah.
But like you said, the important, I think one of the important things, one of the first things you said was, I ask a question and I listen.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a bunch of realtors the other day, and this thought just came to me, and they started talking about interest rates. I said, hold on a second. All right, I realize the only question they know to ask a loan officer is, what's your interest rate? Mm-hmm. But when they talk to you as a realtor and comparing you to other real estate agents, whether or not they should use you, do you start talking about your commission? Well, no. Then why are you talking about the interest rate?
Yeah.
Because the reality is, you don't know enough about it. 1, 2, they don't actually have a home at this moment in time.
Yeah.
we will talk ranges, but you need to get over and beyond that initial question they have, because it's the only question they can think of.
Yeah.
They don't know what questions ask, so you need to hold their hand and lead them into the questions they should be
exactly.
asking.
Yeah, you need to, and that's where it comes back to the podcast, the books, the mentors you have, of being able to ask those questions, of being able to, once again, I really focus on how can I serve people, like literally. And my beliefs is, hey, the way that I serve God is by serving people. And if I'm educating people and putting them first, and I mean, I'll work with any price range. Right. I mean, I've got a $10,000 piece of land right now, and after this, I'm going to $1 million listing in St. Augustine. Exactly. So, like, I mean, I will serve anybody because I know that that person needs help.
Right.
Like, I mean, I worked with one lady who she had, it was in downtown Jacksonville in Springfield. The home had been vacant for 32 years. She'd gone through called 50 realtors and no one would take it.
32 years the house
has been vacant. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was actually still in really good shape, other than the big hole in the floor. But other than that, it was in really good shape. And so we, but nobody else talked to her. Right. And I mean, it ended up being $20,000. And I worked for 4 years on this. 4 years, because it was in probate, and then somebody else died, so it was in a second probate and all this kind. But once again, that woman needed help. She needed somebody to help her. Right. And that's what's most important. Because if you put the customers first, you're going to be successful.
Well, my phrase that I always like to use is, you never know what rock you're going to unturn.
Oh, yeah.
And that you never know, just because that person doesn't look like they have a lot, that they might have a friend that has a lot.
Yeah.
And you just don't know. You don't know what are. But it goes back to a word we used earlier. All the things that we were just, you were talking to, is value. And when it comes down to, the commission, and you continue to, it appears your mission, just add value, add value. Here's my expertise. We're going to take care of you. And then, like I said, the money will follow by continuing to add value.
Of course.
What would you say was probably in what's it been, 4 years you've been at Crossview? I saw your thing last month. Your biggest mistake that you've made in real estate, or at least something that you tell a new agent, don't do that. I did that. You don't want to do that.
That's a really good question. Believing that the good times will last. So, and resting on your laurels.
Yeah.
I think that's once you get a little bit too big for your own britches, that's when you're like, uh-oh, pride comes before the fall. So, I mean, really just the advice I always give to new agents is, once again, figure out what you want to do, have your goals, and Crossview really helped me with that. And make sure you're doing the things every day to do it. That's what Jen would always pound into my head. Are you doing oh man, I'm not getting this? Well, you've been prospecting. Have you been doing this? Have you been so that's the thing that I would say to new agents is hey, focus on the daily. And
consistency sounds like a word
consistency
that you would throw in there.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Consistency is key in just good times or bad. I mean, I remember going into the office. I mean, I would always be there Saturday morning prospecting, just 80, 100, 150 calls Saturday morning all the time. And just my wife, I'd come home, and I mean, no showings afterwards. My wife, hey, how'd it go? I said, I didn't talk to one person, just voicemails. How are you? Do it next, and you just keep doing it.
Keep doing it.
You got to keep doing it. Keep doing it. And so that's the thing to really focus on. It's just being consistent in what you want to do.
My first 12 years of my career was in the call center from Quicken Loans and Loan Depot, and I would log in as early as possible on Saturday morning, because the calls will come in, and just to try to grab that one customer and do a deal. Yeah. And hopefully by noontime, and then I felt that made my day.
Yeah,
got it. Now I did my deal for the weekend, and I'm already going into the week with a deal under my belt.
Oh yeah, and I mean, this is going to sound weird, but I like no's just as much as I like yeses. Like, I really do. Like, somebody telling me, yeah, no, we're good.
That's what makes you good, Steven.
Well, no, because for me, one, it's a time thing. Like, I'm like, hey, we already found a house. Great. That's awesome. Like, I'm happy when I get told that. I'm like, congratulations. That's great. I hope you make it a home. If you ever need anything in terms of vendors or anything like that, I'll share all my contacts with you. No problem. Or if you ever have any questions.
When you actually get somebody on the phone like that, I was just thinking this, because you're making a lot of calls, and like I said, you may make 100 calls, and 3 or 4 people you actually talk to. If you're like, do you, even though they may have said no, whatever, do you like maybe send them a card or just something to say, hey, thanks for talking to me for 30 seconds on Saturday morning?
Without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt, you definitely do that because it's about that relationship. It's, here, perfect example. About 2 years ago, I had a lead that came in, and seller lead, and the property, her mother had passed away. It had to go through probate, then it had to go through foreclosure, and it was right at foreclosure. And we spent a bunch of time, brought in investors, brought in people to all this kind of stuff. And, spent a good amount of time on it. And then she said, Steven, I just don't want to do it. We're going to let it go through foreclosure. Boom, there you go. And I said, hey, no problem. Completely understand. If that's the way it worked out best for their family. Great. Awesome. Like, I was upset for a second, but at the end of the day, hey, there you go. And so she said, but just in the future, so you know, in the next maybe 3, 5, 6 years, we'd probably sell our house and go somewhere else. And she goes, I'd really like for you to come and talk to us when we get to the point. I said, sure, no problem. And then it was last Wednesday. Her name rang on my phone. I'm like, what? She goes, Steven, awesome. We're ready to sell our house.
That's great.
And went on listing appointment on Saturday, and they're listing in the beginning of September.
That right there, that's our industry. And I think a lot of people, they don't understand that the relationships and going out and touching those people, staying top of mind. Obviously, social media has helped us a lot. Staying top of mind of things, sending out the cards. It's been a regular thing, and I keep telling my fellow owners, you got to send out the cards. You got to send out the 5 cards that even the top real estate agents are telling you, and the ones that aren't doing it are like, I need to get back to doing my cards because they've gotten caught up with how busy it was. They've got to go back to the basics.
Well, relationships matter most. Let's just get that out of the way. If we can set that if somebody can set that foundation in their head that relationships matter most, then however you do that to interact with your sphere, you be you. Like, whatever that is, you be you. I know some people do drop-ins and cards and this and this. Whatever that is, you be you.
Whatever you like doing, whatever you're comfortable doing.
Do it great.
10x it.
Every lead source works if you do it.
100%. I agree with that. Let's see. We're running short on time because it's such a great conversation. Let me find out a couple questions that are really good.
Like this, we're just getting into it.
We probably could go for. We definitely could go for a couple hours. When you were talking a little bit earlier, you made me think. If someone asked me about the podcast, I started 3 years ago. Actually, it's been 4 now, and I went to a John Maxwell event.
I love John Maxwell,
and he really. Spending that time, you read in his books, but when you're spending it there and he's talking it, and you're in the room with all these like-minded people, following you, and the whole process, things happen for a reason, and you have to find out, what he puts you on. He gets that person to say no, or in this case, he threw at you that they were just going to let that house go. But the test was, are you going to continue to follow up with them so that you get this call last Wednesday? To me, there was a plan already. The plan's already in play. And how much of your faith keeps you focused? And to me, that when I get down, that's what I think about. Okay, he threw me a curveball. All right, you took a second and said, "Oh man, that stinks." Oh yeah. And then you're like, okay, now what? Why did this happen? What
Of course, yeah. No, so and especially in this business, is you get so much rejection, so many difficult and you could do nothing wrong, and they just, it just goes bad.
Yeah.
And because really, as real estate agents or loan officers, we have control over basically nothing. I mean, just a little bit we have control over, but we don't control the decision maker. We don't control the other decision. Like, there's so many things we can't control.
Right.
It's how do we align it and make it run smoothly? But at the end of the day, I mean, for me, faith comes into it very much. Is you just got to trust that these things are going to work out. I have faith that, hey, a door will close. Yeah, a door's going to close, but that means another one's going to open.
Exactly.
And once again, being grounded. For me, it's in God and in Jesus. For other people, it's something else. That's fine. Be grounded in what you're going to be grounded in, because you will get beat down, and you've got to come back around to, hey, how are we going to make this work?
Right. If you were, as you do mentor new agents, what would you say there's 3 must-dos? Well, and that changes. Obviously, last year probably was different, but right now, we're talking that agents are coming into the industry, even though, with the uncertainty. I wouldn't say it's in decline, because everyone has all their predictions of what's going to happen. Rates are going to go up. No, rates are going to go down. No, the housing market's going to implode. No, it's not, because we have jobs, or everyone has their opinion.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
So someone coming in right now, or maybe someone who's maybe a little challenged, because I'm seeing some of the numbers come in of what agents did last year, and then where we're at this year. Then obviously they're not on pace. With a big year it is, so that reality has to come in. But what are 3 foundational things that you do, or that piece of advice that you would give that person that's hit a lid or getting new into the business right now?
I think once again it goes back to, one, what type of lifestyle do you want? Is go back to that. Especially over the last year, it's just been chaos, and it's been great chaos, and everybody's hopefully been very successful, and all of that. Customers are being served, people are finding homes. So kind of reset that. I've been kind of going through this myself, is reset, like, hey, what type of lifestyle do you want, and what do you want out of this business? Because I think a lot of times we just get off track. We don't, the
big question is always like, what's your why? That's such to me, let's dig deep into the why.
Yeah, exactly.
The why is, I need to make this much income because I like living in this neighborhood. My kids like to do this. Family likes to go on these vacations. I need to make X amount of dollars a month. Is that kind of what you're doing? And kind of work backwards, or what you need to get
working
there?
Backwards, and then, but that's the financial why. If you're just doing this, just like if you just do anything for money, you're not going to be fulfilled by it. You're just not. Like, you can go anywhere and make a bunch of money, and it just is what it is. But outside of your financial why, which you got to know those things. You've got to have, I have that. Hey, I've got a wife, 3 girls. One of my girls has special needs. So that comes very much into it. We have to factor all that in. I know that I've got to make so much money per month, but to make that much money, I've got to make this many sales, this many calls, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you got to know those numbers. But outside of that is, hey, what's your why? For me, it's going back to saying, especially this happens to me when I get worn down, or when I get to the level of, hey, you know what? I'm like at burnout. Like, I'm right there at burnout, which we've all been to it. Like, let's be honest. Let's have a real conversation. Of like, we've all been to that point of burnout. And when I get to that point of burnout, that's when, and Jen, my broker, has really helped me with this, is always circling back to, hey, why are you doing this? And that thing you said is, hey, to educate and empower people to make sure that they're making the right decision. Because that's the thing that bothers me so much, is not losing a deal, or not. It's not the commission. It's, man, I get really upset. And you can ask my wife, or ask my broker. I get upset when people make a bad decision, like that could really affect them negatively. Like, that's what bothers me at my core, of like, like, that's just not a good decision. So
I'm the same way.
But to kind of answer your question is, hey, figure out what kind of lifestyle you want. What does that look like? Figure out what's really important to you, and then just reset, and then be accountable. Set goals and be accountable. If you're going to be accountability, everybody gets, accountability, this. No, you just need to share it with people who you know and love and trust. And say, hey, I'm going to make, let's say it's your broker. Hey, I'm going to make 150 calls today. Great. Tell your broker when you walk in, I'm going to make 50 calls. Would you ask me if I made 50 calls when I leave? That's accountability.
And that's the free coach.
Yeah.
We talked about paying for a coach to hold you accountable. Is like you said, in digging out those 3 things and defining them for that individual person.
Yeah.
You need someone else, and that hopefully that broker is providing it, or I mean, I think you would agree, a senior agent that's been doing this a while has shown success. They're not successful. I guess someone's been doing, hanging around for 20, 25 years can fall into success because they've just kind of like,
they got so many people calling them, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Where there's others that are doing it and staying abreast of our market.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started the podcast a year ago in June, and my question was, hey, how are you re-gearing up for the current market? Getting all these offers on a house, and how are you preparing your sellers for that? How are you preparing your buyers to know that they're going up against 20 other people on this house?
Of course.
And now we're still getting multiple offers, but there's not as many of them, right? We're working trying to find the inventory. Yeah. You got to start going back and doing those things. So that they're not. I think people get, when they're asked that question, because I know I get this thought, what's your why? Well, I mean, golly, I got a lot of whys. Of why I do it. One, because I'm just programmed to go.
Yeah.
I oftentimes go, hey, and I'm appreciative of what I have. But I'm like out there, like it's like I'm what's it, like the hoarders from the Depression era days. They're like grabbing everything, and you kind of want to do it, because I've always had that. This business is a feast or famine. Yeah. You got to run and get as much as you can when it's there, because you just don't know. You have a 2008 come around and everything stops. Hopefully we don't have that type of thing.
And once again, a good way to define that and process through that is when you're sitting in your office and you can either flip on your phone and look at YouTube or make the next phone call. Like, what is going to be the thing that's going to switch you from scrolling on social or getting back to work? That's your why. Like a real easy, like, boom, that's your why. Like, that's what's doing it.
Who's been the most influential person in your career?
In my real estate career?
I'm going to go career in. I mean, if you want to break it down to either or, because you had a successful corporate career, and everything you did sound like you did well at what you were doing. So you can go. I know some people go all the way back to a coach they had in high school or college or something. Who's that person that pops in your mind every once in a while?
Well, so I'll
you think about those days.
Yeah, so I'll give it kind of to you in 3 different people. So one is my dad. He was a great man, still is a great man. He was in sales for 36 years, taught me about people, taught me how to interact with people, taught me, I'm the guy who at the grocery store, I'll talk to the clerk, I'll do this, like all those type of things. So my dad definitely, just of kind of being a man, how to be a man. On the spiritual side of that, I had a high school youth group teacher named Sarah Wackerland, and she's taught me so much about what it means to love God, live out God's purpose on your life, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I would say definitely as a in real estate and professional, without a doubt, Jennifer Hendry, my broker. She's like I said before, she's one of the best leaders I've ever worked for. Very knowledgeable about the market, and always circles it back to, hey, what are we doing for the customer, and how does this relate to how we're serving God?
I need to have Jennifer on the show.
You definitely need to have Jennifer on the show.
Okay, well, hopefully Jennifer's watching.
I'll make the connection.
You'll make the connection.
We'll get you in there.
Yeah, let's get her on next month for sure. 2-minute warning questions. If you've listened to my show, I broke it. I've changed these over time, but there's one that's I've always.
Oh, I love these. Come on, fire away.
What's your in probably your family, because you got the 3 girls and stuff. What is your favorite thing to do in Northeast Florida as a lifestyle question? I was like, as real estate agents, I think we sell lifestyle a lot in the different communities and so forth. What do you, when someone's coming from out of the area, which we have a lot of, what are some of the things you tell them about that you like to do?
Well, so
your family likes to do.
Yes. So by myself, I'm playing golf. I'll go and play golf as much as I can. That's my healthy addiction is let's go play golf. Right. Also with that, with the girls or stuff like that, of course, we hit the beach, all that kind of stuff. We love, actually, our food scene is really good here in Jacksonville. I've got a couple who's came in from Denver this weekend, and we talked for about 20 minutes about housing and what we're looking for and all this. And then they were like, so where should we eat? And then we talked for like 35 or 40 minutes. You got to go here.
Well, I mean, because you can go deep into St. Augustine, all the, up,
we didn't even get to St. Like we just, So, but yes. So
all the way up, I mean, between Fernandina and St. Augustine, everything in between.
Everything in between. So for me, it's golf.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Cool. Is it more important who you know or what you know? And why?
Yes. So, because I love that saying of, hey, it's not what you know, but who you know. But if you don't know something and then you get in front of that person, you just lost your opportunity. So you can meet that person like we talked about. Man, this is the person who, that's what ideal. But if you walk in there not knowing what's going on in the market, what's going on in the greater economy, the local, you just lost your chance. So I say yes, both. You've got to be
much cop out, but
it's a complete cop out. But I presented it so well to you, Tracy.
You did. I do get points. I do get points for presentation.
Yes, is the answer.
Because my feeling, I mean, I don't think you'd actually search someone out if you didn't have some sort of knowledge of why you want. I mean, obviously, you run into somebody out on the street that is famous. Yeah, you might go over there and shake their hand if you're able to do that. I'll tell the story of this. I live on 210, and there's a Waffle House on 210.
Yep.
And one Sunday morning, and I know a lot about football, and I was a Giants fan almost my entire life, with a few years being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan in the late 70s. A decade behind your time. But anyway, I could pull in the Waffle House on this early Sunday morning. My wife wanted Waffle House. So I run over there, and Bill Parcells, the former Giants coach, was walking into the Waffle House. And I don't know, whatever it was, he turned around and walked out, and I'm like right there, and I'm like, oh my God. I am standing in front of Bill Parcells in front of a Waffle House. I'm like, and I had just watched some video on Giants.com or something. But you get to that moment in time, it's like, everything I knew, boop. So that opportunity was blown. So, I appreciate you coming on today.
Of course. No, thank you for having me.
We definitely want to carry on this because it was deep, and I'm really, if you and Jennifer are like-minded, it's going to be interesting having her on and have her conversation.
No, be happy to.
I appreciate you.
Cool. Thank you so much.